All right, so welcome to Book Bingo. We have 6 fabulous authors who are going to be joining us today. They each have 10 minutes to talk about their books. If you have questions for them, you can put that in the chat box. And if we have time at the end, they can answer your questions, or you can the authors can type in their answers in the chat box as we go along. So to play bingo, you will X off as Debbie calls in the chat box. You do not have to have a blackout. You can win vertically, horizontally, or diagonally. And only the calls that Debbie make count. So if one of the authors says the name of their book or the author's name, that does not count as an official call. And only one winner per card and one winner per email address. So I hope that answers all your questions, but if you have others, just feel free to type those in the chat box and one of our staff members will get to that. We're going to start with Krista Burton first. Krista is the creator of the popular blog Effin' Dykes and was a frequent contributor to the online magazine Rookie. Her writing has also appeared in the New York Times, The Guardian, Elle, and Vice. Her book, Moby Dyke, is a hilarious adventure story, a full-throated love letter to lesbian bars, and an open-hearted memoir, all wrapped up in one glorious package. And we do love hilarious, so we can't wait for you to charm us. Welcome, Krista Burton.
Unmute. Hello, I'm Krista. My pronouns are she, her. And yeah, this is my book. It is called Moby Dyke, an obsessive quest to track down the last remaining lesbian bars in America. And it is nonfiction. This is a kind of humorous travelogue memoir, okay? And this book just came out this month, this June, on June 6th, I think, yep. And it is my whole heart. This is my first book, debut, and it means so much to me because okay, so I'm 40 and I've been out and going out for 20 years, and lesbian bars have meant so much to me. They are the spaces where I grew up and became a queer, happy, functioning adult. And I don't even think I can express the amount of friends that I've made, the number of people that I have met in these bars and queer spaces in general. And I think in general, I 100% of the time, I'm going to say that if the choice is between a straight bar and a gay bar, I'm going to go.
Did we lose Krista, or am I the only one freezing?
Okay, I think Krista is frozen. I don't know, Krista, can you hear us? Okay. Since she's frozen, maybe we'll move on to the next author and hopefully she can work out her glitches. I'll be texting her off camera so we can work this out. But let's go ahead and move on to our next author until we can get her figured out. So let's go with Nicolas DiDomizio. His debut novel, Burn It All Down, was published in 2021 and praised as unforgettable by James Patterson. Wow. In his new book, The Gay Best Friend, Nicholas Dominic Marino has become an expert at code switching between the per-masculine and ultra-feminine worlds of his two soon-to-be wed best friends. But this summer, reeling from his own failed engagement and tasked with attending their bachelor and bachelorette parties, he's anxious over having to play both sides. Oh boy, what could ever happen there, Nicholas? Please tell us.
Hello. Yeah, what could possibly go wrong in that scenario? Hi everybody. So the book that I'm promoting this summer is The Gay Best Friend. Yeah, it's a friendship story. Oh, hello. You have rejoined.
Hi, sorry about that. It just dropped me randomly. I don't know what happened.
should we go back? Because I literally just started, so I'm good muting myself and
I'm so sorry. Yeah, I mean, up to you if you want to keep going, and I can go.
oh
at
my
the
God,
end.
no. I wanted to see where your thing was going because I like felt very similarly regarding gay bars. So
Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, I'll keep going. If I drop off again, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so I think I was saying that basically after I saw those news articles, I just panicked and pitched a book where I go to the last remaining bars in America. And at the time I started writing this, there were 21 bars left. And I had very strict rules for how I would determine which bars to go to. And I will read you some rules. There's only 4 from the book. Rule number 1 was I would only visit bars that self-identified as lesbian bars or that had historically always been lesbian bars. Each bar would get 2 or more visits on different days so I could get a good feel for it. That way too, a bar could have an off night without being reviewed on only an off night. I would contact the bar owners and try to interview them, settling for an employee or a regular if the owner couldn't be reached. And the rule number 4, I had to approach and speak to at least 2 strangers at every bar, which for me was absolutely terrifying because I am quite shy. So I knew that if I didn't make a rule where I forced myself every time I went out to approach people, that nothing would ever happen at the bars and I would have nothing to write about. So that is how I approached doing this book. And I feel like the things that I want people to know about it is that number 1, this was the most fun year I ever had in my entire life. Number 2, Moby Dyke is in no way serious or academic at all. I have no degrees in queer theory, and I wanted to find a way to explain how much queer joy I have found in these spaces. I wanted a way to celebrate queer joy. To kind of highlight how this book is not at all serious, I'm going to read a section from a bar I went to in Bloomington, Indiana. The bar is called The Back Door. And this is me talking about something that I call gay time. So here we go. If you're not familiar with gay time, the rules are as follows. A house party that starts anytime after 8, just come on over. The party actually gets going after 10, so best to go at 11, when everyone will be drunk enough to be loose and fun and still sober enough to remember you came. A dinner scheduled for 7 p.m. at someone's house. Dinner is actually at 9:30 because when you arrive at 7:15, there are gluten-free certified tortilla chips and drinks and hummus, and everything's still in its store container, set out on the kitchen counter. But the host hasn't even started cooking yet. They're slowly cutting a single cucumber into tiny pieces while avidly listening to the 7 other queers standing up in their kitchen, gossiping about what Aiden did this time. A dinner scheduled for 7 p.m. at a restaurant. Dinner is at 7, but they won't seat us because they won't seat incomplete parties, and Eli still isn't here, and everyone's texting them at once, and Eli has stopped responding, but did text on my way 22 minutes ago. The Pride Parade starts at 10 a.m. Good luck, this is not happening. The parade will begin moving at 11:30 under a meltingly hot sun, hungover drag queens struggling valiantly, and it will then be halted for 2 hours by a protest. Sunburned children with rainbow face paint will begin crying at 10:03 a.m. Any other Pride event that starts at any other time during the day. No one is coming to a daytime Pride event except for the people who organized it and the PFLAG families. A prearranged 11 a.m. weekend brunch with friends. 56 text messages in the group chat later. Brunch is at 1:30 and at a completely different location. There's a 45-minute wait. Everyone's hungover, and holy shit, someone brought Caitlin. So that's kind of the flavor of the book. It's very casual, this is what me describing exactly what's happening at the bars as we go. There's not a ton of history in it. So if you are like looking for like solid facts about the history of lesbian bars, this is not the book. This is more like a fun summer beach read where I describe the incredible challenges of trying to squeeze in 21 bar visits while still working a full-time job. So I hope that if you read it, I hope you like it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Krista. And thank you, Sarah, for typing in the chat box. You can purchase books from all of our authors tonight on our website, adventuresbythebook.com. The link is in your chat box. And most of our authors have sent us signed book plates, so it would be coming with an autographed book plate. And we do appreciate your support in purchasing books from these authors who have a difficult time after COVID, trying to get back in the groove of things with in-person events again. So we really appreciate your support, and we'll keep that line open for a while so that you can purchase books even after the event. Now we're going to go back to Nicolas. So I feel like I need to reintroduce him at least partially for that little glitch in technology. As I mentioned, his first book, Burn It All Down, was published in 2021 and praised as unforgettable by James Patterson. His new book is The Gay Best Friend, where he talks about Dominic Marino, who has become an expert at code switching. And this summer, reeling from his own failed engagement and tasked with attending their bachelor and bachelorette parties, he's anxious over having to play both sides. And we're anxious to hear about how this is all going to play out. Welcome, Nicolas.
Hello again. First of all, I'm like sold on Moby Dyke because I am that gay who like starts the dinner party at 7 and then is slicing the cucumber and putting the charcuterie together. And like dinner's not served for another 2 hours.
Yep.
So I felt attacked, but also in a good way from that little anecdote. But anyway, so yeah, The Gay Best Friend is a I'm so excited about this book because like you were saying, Susan, like my first book came out in 2021, which was like pandemic times, and so I didn't really get to do a ton in the way of promotion, and I felt like that the book itself kind of took a back burner to like bigger books of the pandemic era, and it wasn't the best experience. So I'm excited to be re-debuting with this really fun beach read that I wrote, which is a summer wedding comedy, and it is told entirely from the POV of the best man, who is also the gay best friend. And basically his name is Dominic, and he grew up with his best friend Patrick, in the 90s and the early 2000s, and was fully in the closet for most of their friendship. And basically he came out in college. They kind of drifted apart at that time. Dominic was in a very like, I'm gay now type of phase, and Patrick joined a fraternity. And so it wasn't until law school when they reconnected, when Patrick was dating this new girl named Kate, who he is now getting married to when the book starts. They're all in their 30s at this point. And so it's an interesting dynamic because Dominic, our main character, has been best friends with the groom since he was a kid, and they have their own type of friendship, but it's interesting when you grow up in the closet and then you come out to like your closest friend, that friendship changes. Like I'm sure it's different for everybody, but in my experience it was like coming out to my guy friends was it was strange. Like some of them I just never talked to again, and we completely went our separate ways. And then the ones that I did stay friends with, the friendship became something a little different, and you're no longer the best friend. You become like, quote unquote, the gay best friend. And you become like really good friends with all of their wives and girlfriends, which is what happened to me. So that was kind of where the idea for the book started, which was like, my best friend's getting married, but I'm also like really good friends with his soon to be wife. And what happens when these wedding traditions start happening, i.e. like I need to stop saying because this is a fiction, it's a novel, so it is fictional. And I like have already had some moments with real life friends who are like, do not tell my wife anything. That happens in the book was inspired by, so everything is fictionalized, I will say. But anyway, so yeah, how do you navigate, like the character in the book, he's throwing his best friend a bachelor party and he wants it to be really fun. And but also like he knows his friends other friends. So when they drifted apart in college, you know, he joined a frat, so he has all these other like frat boy friends, so he knows the party's going to be, it's going to go a little crazy because just of the nature of like who these guys are. And then on his other shoulder, he has, you know, the bride who's expecting him to kind of babysit and keep it clean and report back to her if anything like crazy happens. So it's basically a story about him who, and as you know, he's a people pleaser, so he's trying to navigate these two sides, you know, not get in the middle of any drama, but also not have to you know, not, he wants his friendships to remain intact and not have to like fight with either one of them. So that becomes impossible to do when the bachelor party just goes totally off the rails. And so, and then there's a little bit of an unexpected guest at the bachelor party. There's a little bit of maybe some romance that starts to develop secretly behind the scenes. So the whole thing is just, it gets very messy and very, you know, and very chaotic, but in a way that I think by the end of it, he is able to have a little bit of a self-growth journey, and he stops, you know, shrinking himself into this role as like the token gay best friend, and starts to think like, what, you know, who am I as a person? And like outside of when I'm trying to fit in with the guys or trying to fit in with the girls, like who am I? So that's really the heart of the book. It's there's a lot going on, but there's a lot of hijinks, there's a lot of comedy. It's definitely not, you know, it's a beach read through and through. It takes place on the beach in Mystic, Connecticut, which is like one of my favorite places in the world. And it was just a lot of fun to write, and it was, in a weird way, even though it is like a rom-com, I did find it to be pretty therapeutic, because I went into it like really thinking like, you know, this is just going to be super fun. I'm going to use some experiences that I've had at like crazy bachelor parties and you know, make a book out of it and like have fun with it and stuff. And but through that process, I really ended up exploring this like theme of code switching, and how when you do grow up in like, you know, I mean, I can't even tell you how different I was like 15 years ago, you know, being in the closet, and you kind of just totally are a different person a lot of the time. I mean, I think nowadays, hopefully it's a little different because like, you know, we live in a more progressive society, but like in the 90s and in the early 2000s, it was different. And so the easier thing to do was to just totally like, you know, cosplay as like a quiet, reserved, masculine straight guy and like do horrible things and just you know, do all that stuff. So anyway, so all of that ended up coming up when I was writing the book, which I didn't expect to happen. And so it's been really interesting, you know, seeing it now that it's like out, and even like seeing like the reactions of like some of my friends. Like I was just on a golf trip this weekend with some of the guys that I grew up with, and like some of them had read the book and some of them didn't, and the ones who read it had a lot of interesting things to say, because like we don't talk about this stuff. So it was like it was like the first time they ever even knew that I had feelings about like being gay, which is fun, which I guess is on me too, because I don't like have those conversations. But you know, I think that's the beauty of writing for all of us. Like no matter what story we're telling, it's like it is an outlet to like explore things and you know, and grow through your characters. And so yeah, I'm like completely rambling at this point. And I will say, before this, I was at trivia, so I had a few beers, but yeah, that's basically the gist of the book. But it's a very fun, it's like, you know, it's like the perfect, if anyone has like a book club or a beach, people who like to read on the, like I'm the biggest beach reader, like it's my favorite thing. Like my favorite author is literally Ellen Hilderbrand. So this is very much in that vibe, even though it does attempt to explore some, you know, deeper themes. But in any case, yeah, I hope that my speech helped anyone who's playing bingo, and that I said words that will trigger people to win, or however that works. I don't really know, but it's been a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for having me. And I can't wait to hear about everyone else's books.
Thank you, Nicholas. And we're glad you're here as your true, authentic self, because you are charming and funny, and we love it. And, a couple of comments that came in that about people who enjoy these author nights. They wouldn't have thought about this book until they listened to the authors, so it's entertaining. Hannah said she's adding this book to her book club list, which is great, Hannah, because remember that all these authors are Novel Network authors, so maybe somebody can type in the link to Novel Network in the chat box, and you can go there and schedule your book club visits there. Debbie said that, Nick, your book is really well written and insightful, loved it. And we thank Liz for her book purchase orders to support the authors. Thank you, Nicholas. We're going to move on to Elle. Elle Everhart writes romantic comedies featuring the internet, sarcasm, and lots of queer characters, especially bisexual characters, because as she says, I too cuff my jeans and can't properly sit in chairs. Her sparkling debut, Wanderlust, or romantic comedy Wanderlust, is about two near strangers and complete opposites who win a radio contest for a trip around the world. Her book has been deemed laugh out loud funny, sizzling hot, and full of heart. That's a great combination, Elle. Welcome.
Thank you. Just to check, you can hear me. Sometimes
Yes.
my AirPods like to dip out. Okay, perfect. So hi, I'm Elle Everhart. I forgot that line was in my bio, and as we speak, I'm currently sitting here, my legs all twisted up underneath the desk. So once again, being a bisexual stereotype. So there's that for me. Happy Pride Month. But yeah, I'm Elle Everhart. My pronouns are she, her, and this is my debut romantic comedy Wanderlust. It's going to be out with Putnam Books in 6 days, and we're just getting into the whirlwind of the week of publication, so it's really exciting. I'm originally from Baltimore, but I'm currently living in London, so from the 29th of June. So far, it's going so good. Wanderlust follows Dylan Coughlin, who impulsively rings a radio station and wins a global travel contest, with the catch that she has to travel with this random stranger selected out of her phone. And of course, that stranger is this uptight, unbearably posh guy named Jack that she once accidentally ghosted. So not only do they not remember each other, but she met him and then completely forgot he existed. He definitely doesn't appreciate. She didn't try to do it, in her defense, but he definitely comes into the situation with a little bit of hurt feelings. This book is really fun to write. I've been to a couple of these locations myself, and I spent hours on Google Maps following along on Street View, trying to immerse myself in the places that I haven't yet been to, however much you can sort of immerse yourself somewhere just through Google Maps. I've got so much research sitting in old documents. There's old links to YouTube videos. The robot restaurant in Tokyo in particular was such a fever dream to experience through YouTube videos. And I've since spoken to people who have actually been there, and it is exactly the way that it was being presented to me online. Though I sadly heard that it shut now permanently, and I'm devastated because that was the first thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to get to Tokyo and go to that restaurant because it just seemed like an unhinged experience I needed. But so that was devastating, but it was fun to see it playing out on YouTube. So if you're curious, you can still Google it. It's up there for you to look at. I spent days on travel websites and blogs, pretty much anything I could find on the internet. I was reading it, copiously taking notes about it, and so much of it didn't end up making it into the book, but for some reason, as I was writing it, I needed to know the ins and outs of the trip, even if I cut out the vast majority of it in the actual novel. The whole inspiration point was my trip to Iceland back in 2018, which feels like a lifetime ago. There's a point in Wanderlust when Dylan and Jack are standing beside this glacial lake, and the description of what they're seeing in that scene and the kind of awe that they're feeling is pretty much exactly lifted from my experience being there. It's a place that even still now, 5 years later, I can't do math, 5 years later, I still go back and look at those pictures and I still think about that place a lot. And I wanted to try and capture that. The whole novel kind of built itself out from that point. One of the best things about rom-coms is that they're a little bit unhinged, I think. They don't really make sense. There's never been a realistic reason that anyone needs to like fake date anyone else. That just doesn't happen. And I love the fact that they just take a premise and they run with it. And when I started thinking about writing a book about, I thought, okay, how can I take this normal, reasonable idea and explode it into something that is completely wild and very rom-com? And the best way to do that for me was to fling these strangers to every single corner of the earth that I could possibly think of. I wrote it before Lofton, but I was really in the trenches editing it through drafts before to things, but 10 drafts is through, and in lockdown way to get out of my house and escape. So in part, that's what I'm hoping this is for people now. Maybe they're already out of their house having a good time, but now they can fling around other places and kind of get out of their headspace a little bit more. In general, I think one of my favorite things about traveling and why I was drawn to writing a travel book is that it gets you out of your comfort zone. Even if you're someone who has really rigid routines, a structure, and maybe you build yourself a very detailed itinerary before you travel, you're still in a place you've not been to, in a setting you've never been to. There's people around you that are different to the people in your everyday life. And I think as a writer, that's a really fun space to play in, especially if you've got someone like Dylan who is really relaxed, not at all concerned about her itineraries. And then you've got someone like Jack who is so uptight and needs to live by a very strict schedule. Those people are going to butt heads and it's going to be a bit of a mess. And so it's fun. It seems kind of sadistic now that I'm actually thinking about it and saying it out loud. It's kind of horrible, but it's fun to put people who you know are going to fight and you know are going to have issues, can't escape from. They're trapped here in planes, in tiny hotel rooms with each other for weeks, and they either need to kill each other or figure it out. And it's a rom-com, so they obviously don't kill each other. So clearly they figure it out. But it's such a fun space to be writing in. And the last thing that I'll say is that, yeah, this book is a really fun, uncomfortable to lovers story because they're not quite enemies. But I did think that it was important for me to talk about some of the heavier things that come up in the book. Dylan is dealing with a lot of internet harassment, the breakdown of her family relationship, largely because she decided to share a story about an abortion that she'd gotten when she was at university. And her parents have very different perspectives on this. And as she's coming to terms with the breakdown of their relationships in that sense, she's also realizing that there was a lot of biphobia in the way that her parents were treating her. This expectation that, well, you're bi, so you could just marry a man and then you'll look straight. And there's so much mess tied up. And these little micro things that anytime that they were happening, it was easy to brush them off and forget about them. But the cumulative effect of them on her now, she's realizing that she really needs to deal with them. And these things were just part of her life. I wasn't setting out to talk about these things specifically. I just wanted to tell her entire story. And even though it was hard, sometimes, especially writing the bits about the internet and the way that her family relationship had pretty much fractured, it was good watching her triumph over these things anyway. Good watching her find joy and find love and find a life that she wanted to live in spite of these things. that she was able to grow beyond them and repair the relationships that she wanted to, that she felt could be repaired. It felt empowering in a strange way, maybe, seeing her going through this and watching her find that joy anyway. And I felt that that was really important for me as I was writing it, and I hope that that resonates with people who read it. So thank you so much for listening. Sorry if I rambled a little bit. I was really trying not to. If you have any questions, I'm really excited to hear them during the Q&A. You can put them in the chat as well. And I hope everyone's bingo cards are going well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Elle. And thank you, Hannah, who said that she will definitely be using this book to escape the 9-to-5 reality, and she's already purchased the book. So we appreciate that. And we also appreciate Elle that she has gone above and beyond, because it's 2:00 a.m. in London and she's still awake and joining us. And we're grateful to you for that. Very appreciative. Thank you. Next up, we have Jessie Leon. Jessie is a social impact consultant to foundations, impact investors, nonprofits, and real estate developers on ways to address issues for at-risk youth. Since receiving a master's degree from Harvard, he's managed multi-million-dollar philanthropic grant making for various foundations and banking institutions. Jessie's unforgettable memoir, I'm Not Broken, is an inspirational portrait of one young man's indomitable strength and spirit to survive against all possible odds. And because Jessie is based in San Diego, where I'm at, we've had the good fortune of working together multiple times. And I know that he's just so humble and gracious, and he's been through so much that he makes us cry every time. So Jessie, let's see, are you going to make us cry again this time? We don't know. Welcome.
Oh gosh, hi everybody. Hopefully not this time. All this talk about romantic comedies and, you know, fun, uplifting books. My dream is to write a rom-com from a BIPOC two-spirit perspective. There's not many of our stories out there, and I'm just so happy to be here. So happy to meet all these authors and feeling a part of a global writers community. So I am Jessie Leon. I'm the author of I'm Not Broken, and in January, No Estoy Roto came out, the translation. I read the audiobooks. The audiobooks are hands down fire. I really enjoyed being in the studio, reading the audiobooks, and I'm exploring hopefully future opportunities in that space. But a little bit about my book. I'm Not Broken is really the story of the journey that I took to win back my life. And if I freeze, please wave me down. I was a little nerdy, caring kid. I don't know if anybody could see that. This was me at 10 years old on the left, and this is me at 11 years old on the right. Loving, caring, nerdy kid, used to love reading and getting lost in National Geographic magazines. And then, and this is me at 14 going on 15 on the left. And that's me graduating from Harvard. The reason I put those images up is because I think it puts it in perspective. At 11 years old, I was sent to a gift shop to buy water balloons here in San Diego and got sexually abused. And about a month into the sex abuse, the owner of the gift shop started to pimp me out in the sex trafficking industry of San Diego for about till I was 14. And I hated who and what I was. And I blamed that little boy for a very long time. I used to tie my shirt in knots. When I found out Linda Carter was Mexican, so Wonder Woman was Mexican, I would tie my shirt in a knot and I would spin around in circles in the living room, and my mom would laugh with me. And I used to love cooking with my mom in the kitchen and separating the good beans from the bad beans, and the conversations over separating the beans, you know, typical Mexican mom. And she loved me. And I talk about in my book, my journey of identity and how I went from hating this little kid and blaming myself for the sex abuse, the sex trafficking, that if I only had been as masculine like my brother was. See, I come from Southeast San Diego, and back in the late 80s, early 90s, it was the pinnacle of gang violence. And so everyone around me was, gang affiliated. And so I changed. I shaved my head. I started training my hair to go back, and I started looking like a wannabe gangster and became extremely hyper masculine. Toxic masculinity ran my life, and it's how I survived on the streets. At 14, when the authorities got involved, I fell through the cracks. And even though I was assigned a therapist by the state as part of the victim witness program, how does a child go from 14 to 18 while in weekly therapy sessions to getting strung out on crystal meth and heroin, turning to the streets of LA, Hollywood Boulevard, Santa Monica Boulevard, getting sexually exploited as part of the commercial sex trade of the streets? And at 18, I ended up homeless, sleeping in Balboa Park. And so I know these are tough topics, but I start my book at Harvard graduation, and I end it at Harvard graduation. And I wrote my book to inspire those of us that have dealt with issues of identity, addiction, depression, suicide attempts, that no matter how dark life seems to get sometimes and our painful realities, that we can accomplish anything, and that I'm not alone, and that I'm not broken. And it took me a very long time to acknowledge that in my heart and in my soul, that I'm not broken and I am worthy. And so, and then I never thought, every day I wake up and I get these new experiences, like now, I didn't think I would be connecting with rom-com authors way across the lake, and just, it's just a beautiful feeling. Since my book came out, I started consulting with the federal government on human trafficking and sex trafficking. I work in the field of philanthropy and impact investments and affordable housing. But since the book came out, I've kind of been pivoting. I've been doing a lot of public speaking around the importance of access to gender affirming, culturally competent, and multilingual trauma-informed care, especially for low-income communities and communities of color. I've been doing a lot of trainings on different Native American reservations on Two-Spirit LGBTQ+ issues, and feels like sometimes I'm living my best life. And I go back to the audiobook. If anyone's interested in reading the book, and I hope Susan can attest to this, folks have listened to the audiobook while in the car, and they get home and they start reading as if I'm reading to them, and they go on this journey with me, and I did not hold back. I thought that some of the emotional parts of my book, where I got really deep and vulnerable, that they were going to get edited out, but they didn't. And I wore my heart on my sleeve, mostly because I know what it's like to feel alone. I didn't come from a supportive community where, when I was dealing with issues of identity, being Latino, raised along the US-Mexico border, confused about who and what I was, there weren't role models in gang culture around me. You still don't see it today. I mean, recently in the last couple of months, like in the last month, there's this, gay Latino couple that's been blowing up on social media, because it's just still not accepted. And there's a lot of things in my book that had to be taken out. I couldn't mention neighborhoods. I couldn't mention street corners. I couldn't mention certain geographies because I'm gay, because of the death threats are really real. A week before my book came out, I got 2 death threats, and I had to get the FBI involved. And so sometimes I get really emotional, because the reality of some of us that come from communities of color, low-income communities, and Two-Spirit Native American communities, it's our realities are oftentimes very different. And there's this movement among BIPOC communities about letting people in as opposed to coming out. Sometimes coming out can be extremely dangerous for some of us. And so there's this movement of letting people in. And so part of my journey has been letting people in at the right time when I really feel that I'm safe, especially given my background of being, abused and sex trafficked for a very long time. By the time I was 14 years old, there was over 1,000 sex partners. And so, but the journey of my memoir, I'm Not Broken, really takes the reader through my journey of living abroad and dating a guy in Madrid who, looking like a hip hop, urban, Chicano gangster, wasn't trendy in the mid-90s in Madrid. So I meet this guy who eventually became a makeup artist for a real famous Spanish movie director, which will remain nameless in this conversation. But he took me shopping, and I started wearing fitted clothes, and I started getting comfortable with my identity and my sexuality, and really wanted to take the reader through that journey of identity formulation and how I got to Harvard, that I didn't get there alone. And so with that, I just wanted to read one little piece of my book, and it's really towards the end. And it's when I signed up for a class on leadership development at Harvard. And it says, in that environment, I spoke up about issues of race, class, gender, and sexuality. I had no idea what I was in for. Being outspoken and liberal at UC Berkeley is one thing, but being outspoken and liberal at Harvard is another. In leadership terms, I was killed off immediately. The manner in which I spoke, my body language, my demeanor, my tone, the language I used, my posture, the color of my skin, how I dressed, my tattoos, the fact that I spoke up and always participated, you name it. Everything about me reminded others of those people, the kinds of people who those in position of leadership have to deal with, or who they actually many times don't deal with, by killing off, discrediting, and shutting out. In that classroom, I learned that I will always represent a segment of this population to others. And I felt that it was my duty to speak to issues of race and inequality as matters that need to be addressed up front and not treated like add-ons or secondary thoughts in the creation of public policy. I learned that being the success story comes with both a benefit and a curse. I can speak firsthand about being a beneficiary of social programs that had a positive impact in my life, but sometimes people interpret my success as that of an individual who pulled himself up by his own bootstraps, as opposed to my success being the product of a network, the efforts of many people, some of them sometimes total strangers, like Susan, thank you. And at different touch points in my life, who made sure that I didn't fail. For me, there were no damn bootstraps. I didn't acquire my success on my own. And so I wrote my book to inspire others to not give up. And I welcome you to go on my journey with me, support LGBT authors. We need to right now more than ever. We need to stick together and support one another. So with that, thank you for being here. Pick up I'm Not Broken and No Estoy Roto, and I love y'all.
Thank you, Jesse. Well, I mean, Sarah summed it up and said, thank you for sharing. What a powerful message. And I like to remind Jesse every time he talks about his difficult story that look at you now. So proud of him. Yeah. Marcy said, that's beautiful. Yeah, it's CD said, thanks, Jesse, for sharing. I wish more people would hear your message and be open to your story. So
thank you. And be on the lookout. TEDx San Diego. I just did TEDx here on the issue of sex trafficking in boys because it's not talked about. We don't talk about these issues, especially in communities of color. And so it should be coming out in about a month or two. So please follow me on LinkedIn, social media, Jesse Leon Author, and my website, jesseleonauthor.com.
we will. And just as a reminder, we do send out, for those of you who registered through Adventures by the Book, and we have captured your email address, we do send out a thank you email with links to all our authors and how you can support them, where you can buy their books, where you can follow them on social media, where you can find their website. So we appreciate you all. Next up, Jeffrey Dale Lofton. Jeffrey spent many a night acting on the stages of DC's theaters and performing arts centers. He even scored a few television appearances, including a Super Bowl halftime commercial. Now, wait a minute. We do Superbook. I'm just wondering, halftime show. Is there a halftime show in your future? I will have to talk.
I'm open to anything.
Jeffrey calls the nation's capital home now, where he serves as a senior advisor at the Library of Congress, surrounded by books and people who love books. In short, paradise. His debut, Red Clay Susie, is the coming-of-age story of Phil Bett, a gay, physically misshapen boy in rural Georgia who battles bullying, ignorance, and disdain as he makes his way through life as an outsider before finding acceptance in unlikely places. And we'd love to hear a happy story about finding friendship and acceptance in unlikely places. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Thank you so much for having me. First, I want to say I am so inspired by hearing all of these authors talk about their journeys to publishing these works. It's just so thank you, Adventures by the Book, Novel Network, and the Jefferson County Public Library for bringing us all together. This is a special night. So, Red Clay Susie. Not realizing at the time that I was writing, well, I was really laying the foundation for a fictionalized memoir. I began writing this book, my debut, when I left home to attend LaGrange College, which is a small liberal arts institution in LaGrange, Georgia, West Central Georgia, halfway down, close to Alabama, to give you a sense of where it is. And there I majored in communications and theater. And the college in the town, LaGrange, their greatest appeal, because I was a teenager, was that they were away from where I grew up, away from Warm Springs, Georgia. And Warm Springs, Georgia, you may recall, is the home of Roosevelt's little White House that he went to for the Therapeutic Springs decades ago. But for me, Warm Springs, Georgia was a suffocating, deeply conservative community that I associated with bullying and homophobia and body shaming. And so being away from home for the first time had an unexpected effect on me. It was as though I was losing my mind. It was like a retaining wall burst in my mind, and outflowed years of pent-up frustration and humiliation and fear and anger that I had gotten really good at pushing down way deep down inside me for all of the years that I had lived in Warm Springs. And so as an instinct, I started writing. I didn't think about it. It just sort of like happened. And I started writing about, really furiously scribbling in my notebooks, these very detailed descriptions of what it felt like growing up in a family that simply had no idea what to do with a child like me. It was really kind of an expunging of my insides. And I've come to think of it as actually an exorcism by exposition. Because you see, I was born gay into a fundamentalist family whose parenting approach was, well, it was not willful neglect. I would not go that far, but it was parenting through love, but also it was equal parts love and fear and ignorance. I mean, I just didn't fit that male child middle class mold that they knew, the only one that they knew. And I mean, what were they supposed to do with, a slight of build, effeminate boy who preferred to dance around the living room to the theme song from the Partridge Family rather than, go deer hunting or do target practice with any number of the guns that were secreted away in all the dressers in our house or stored under the beds of every bedroom in the house. And then you add to that I was born with this significant skeletal deformity of the chest that made taking off my shirt in public just an unthinkable act. So, I was trying to hide the inside and the outside of me. And remember, we're in hot as blazes, Georgia, where, the uniform of the day during the summer, especially for boys, is bare feet, cutoffs, and bare chest. So even today, I mean, the thought of boys cavorting around outside without a care in the world is kind of paralyzing for me on some level. It's well, I'll put it this way. In those early years, my style was more careworn than carefree. And as early as 4 or 5 years old, that's when in Georgia you're called a young'un. So when you're 4 or 5 years old, you're called a young'un. But even at that early age, I was a walking target of derision and bullying, even from members of my own extended family. Now, but I'm not telling you all this for a plea for pity. I'm not, because those parts of me that were so painful earlier, my homosexuality, my misshapen body, that was the hand I was dealt. And I've really come to accept them all. I mean, they're what makes me the person I am today. But back then, I mean, even during the best of times, it was so hard to bear. And sometimes I would go into my bedroom and I would wedge myself at the foot of the bed between the mattress and the footboard, because it felt like a hug. It felt like I was being embraced. And for a long time, my child's mind reasoned that this habit of pressing myself into this too small, tight space, this unforgiving space, was the reason that I had this chest deformity. And of course, that had the added effect of adding self-hatred and blame to my little kid's cocktail of shame and humiliation. But back to writing. The act of writing in my college notebooks, filled with, these white hot memories of my perfectly imperfect family and boyhood friends, was, I know now, the start of the healing process. It was like rubbing a salve on an open wound. So back to LaGrange College. At some point, and I can't remember exactly when it happened, but the press of coursework just got the better of me. There was no time. And so I put my writing away. I packed it away in a box. And I mean, I had every intention of going back to it after, a semester or so, when I got my college sea legs under me. But I didn't go back for 30 years. And so what happened? Okay, fast forward to Washington, D.C., which is where I now live. And I moved up here right after college for a summer job as acting. And but I stayed. And during those years, reading became my biggest outlet outside of work hours, my biggest pleasure, my biggest escape. And one day I picked up Harper Lee's Incandescent to Kill a Mockingbird. And I had read it in high school, but I wanted to read it again as an adult with my adult perspective. And meeting Scout Finch again, another outsider, child living in the South, watching her navigate this small town with its sharply drawn inhabitants, there was a shock of recognition that I just did not have when I first read it as a younger person. Next, I read the deeply moving Call Me By Your Name by Andre Aciman. And I didn't really know a lot about it, but the title, and I didn't see the film, and I still haven't seen the film actually, but the title was so intriguing to me. I thought it was brilliant. And those two books were like two sticks of kindling rubbed together by the most effeminate Boy Scout ever. And it's the power of literature for me. I know all of you have felt it. It broke me open. It sparked a fire in me. And so I thought about those journals, those stream of consciousness journals from college. And I went, because I keep everything. And I went and I pulled them out and I read them with tears and even with embarrassment because of the rawness. And somewhere along the way, probably subconsciously, at first I decided to turn it all into a fictionalized memoir about growing up in the Deep South always on the outside looking in at a world that just didn't square with what I felt on the inside of me. And that is how Red Clay Susie was born. And I actually have been asked a couple of times, did it take courage to write this book? And the answer is no, it didn't take courage. In fact, I think writing Red Clay Susie gave me courage, because when I came out as gay to my parents 30 years ago, I did it in tears and with shame, because I was ashamed and my parents were ashamed of me and they were mortified. But writing this novel and sharing it with the world has been like coming out a second time. But this time is the whole me, not just one part of me. Coming out as the inside me and the outside me. And this time, I'm not ashamed. And I am smiling. And I have a wonderful, circle of chosen family and real family that I was born to. My parents have pretty much come around more or less. We've had a lot of years to get there, but I want to make an important side note here. I wrote it initially for myself, but at some point in there, I thought, I'm not writing it for myself anymore. I'm writing it for young people today who are having a rough time of it. Here's a statistic for you. 45% of queer youth seriously considered killing themselves last year. That's unacceptable. So my way of contributing is to write a story that I hope will be a roadmap of sorts, not a roadmap for a car, but a roadmap inside a heart and a mind. And so a portion of the sales of Red Clay Susie go to support the important work of the Born This Way Foundation and the Trevor Project, wonderful organizations, if you don't know them, that every day do important work to enrich and save the lives of at-risk youth. So if we were in a room together, I'd pass around this. This is, so the car, Red Clay Susie is, cars are such an important part of the book, and the protagonist, Philbert, is obsessed with them. This is a 1968 Mercury Cougar Matchbox, which has doors that opened. And I imagined that this little car had wings and it carried me places that only existed in my imagination. This little car saved my life. If we were in a room together, I would bring my jar of red clay taken from my parents' yard and put in a properly washed and dried Duke's mayonnaise jar. And I would open it and pass it around. I wish you could smell it. It is intoxicating, and feel it. It takes you there. Once red clay touches you, it claims you. It's indelible. So thank you so much for letting me be here with you today. I hope you'll enjoy Red Clay Susie and support public libraries. Happy Pride, everyone.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for your authentic story and your courage and your vulnerability and everything. You're a gift to the world, and I hope you see that now, as all of our authors are tonight. And we hope you that pick up all of their books. I do want to announce that unfortunately Viola Shipman is not able to make it after all. So what we're going to do is we have time for a few questions. If you want to type your question in the Q&A box below, or I don't even know if I see a Q&A box below, but maybe in the chat box if you have questions. And while we're waiting for a few questions to come in, I do want to announce some of our upcoming events. If you are in the Southern California area or would like to travel here at the end of July, we are headed to the Pageant of the Masters with best-selling author Nicola Harrison, who wrote a book called Hotel Laguna, and we hope to have dinner at Hotel Laguna, followed by a wonderful evening at the Pageant of the Masters. Our next virtual event is going to be August 24th. We are following up our very popular January Pitch Fest event with a fall Pitch Fest, Fall into Reading, where we will have 15 authors speed pitching their books. We'll send out everybody with cheat sheets, so you get a little information about the authors and their books and can make notes on why you want to select these authors for your book club. And our next important in-person event that I want to talk about is Superbook, which we founded 5 years ago, modeled after Super Bowl, except it's on a Saturday. And we're doing it with 20 authors. And this year we have an incredible lineup already. We have international bestselling author Martha Hall Kelly and her daughter TikTok sensation Mary Elizabeth Kelly. We have Team and W, New York Times bestselling authors Beatrice Williams, Lauren Willig, and all right, the third one skipped my mind. Sorry about that. But we have an amazing lineup for you. It's a fun event, as Jesse talked about earlier. So we hope you will come to San Diego. We planned it on President's Day weekend next year. Karen White, thank you, Tessa. And we planned it on President's Day weekend so that you could all come to San Diego, because who doesn't want to come to San Diego anyway, but especially in February when the rest of you are suffering through the winter curse. You can come to San Diego, spend a marvelous weekend with these fabulous authors and at the beach. So any questions anybody has? If not, I'm going to ask each of our authors to say a few final words and maybe say something that they haven't had a chance to talk about, a message that they want to convey to everybody. Again, we hope that you will purchase their books. We'll leave our website open for that. So that you can do so. And for those of you who have already ordered books, if they have been released, they've been sent out. And if they haven't been released, we will send them out on publication date. We also hope you will schedule visits with these authors on your book club, your library groups. And a special thanks again to Marcy and the Jefferson County Public Library. I will leave the final thoughts to her to close it out, but let's go to each of our authors now so that they can say a few final closing words. And since you're right there on the screen, Jeffrey, final words from you, anything you want to say or mention to everybody before we close out for the evening.
I'm often asked what I would say to my younger self. And it's actually the author's note in the book, and it's some version of bullies or paper predators who have no more power over you than you give them, because they're probably more afraid of the world than you. And your body is imperfect as it is, real or perceived imperfections. It's precious. So treat it with as much love and kindness as you can, so it'll take you as far as it can. And the final thing is love. True love is never wrong. So bravely bestowed on whomever is worthy of that gift. That's what I wish I'd known.
Beautiful words to close out on. Thank you, Jeffrey. And thanks for joining us tonight. Final words, Elle.
Okay, hopefully you can still hear me. We've had to change speakers. I think I'm gonna borrow Jeffrey's idea. I really liked that, Jeffrey, so thank you for that. Things I would say to my younger self. Similarly, it made it into the dedication of my book, so this is something we share, I think. In part, I've dedicated it to my son, but also to anyone who needed a reminder to be brave. And there were several points in my life when I needed that reminder. And especially when you take something like a book that is so personal, even if it's never anything I've experienced in my life, there is so much about it that is personal, and it is a little bit scary allowing other people to read that and see you. So I would remind myself that it's okay to wear your heart on your sleeve a little bit. Vulnerability, in fact, won't kill you. And that one day you will be sitting here being vulnerable in front of loads of people and you will survive the experience. So thank you for having me. It was really a delight hearing from all of you. And I cannot wait to read your books. They seem amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Elle. And thank you again. I mean, it's almost 3 a.m. in London now, and you're still with us. I'm so impressed. Thank you. Thank you for that as well. Beautiful words to close out on. And Nicolas, final words.
So I'll continue the theme because that is a good one. And to second that, like everyone's speeches have been so amazing. Like my TBR has grown quite a bit this evening, but I'm excited to learn more about all of these books. But yeah, I would tell my younger self similarly that like shame is a waste of time and stop giving it so much power. I would also tell my younger self to drink more water. I feel like I wasn't fully hydrated until I was like in my 30s. and that's neither here nor there, but it was like the first thing that came to my mind when that question was raised. So yeah, drink more water and like release the shame, let go, and all of that. And yeah, this was such a great event. I'm so glad that and honored to even be invited and to talk about my book, and it is out now. And thank you again to the Adventures by the Book and the Novel Network and the Jefferson County Library for hosting this amazing event.
Thank you, Nicholas. It was a pleasure having you. Krista, final thoughts.
Sure. Continuing the theme, it also made it into my dedication. Just the idea that in the queer community, I feel like in general, we strive to welcome others. And I feel like I ran into this so much on my book, needing to be the person to like welcome other people, and then finding in the bars that others were like incredibly open and welcoming to me. And I feel like I would tell my younger self that you can grow up to be the person that you needed as a child. And that's been incredibly healing and incredibly wonderful to experience. And I would also tell my younger self to wear sunscreen, because I did not. But in general, this was so fun and so wonderful, and I can't wait to read all your books. I am really excited about them. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Krista. Jesse.
I'm going to follow the same theme, and only because I keep a photo of literally little Jesse right here on my desk. And I look at it every morning and I tell him, I love you so much. Little nerd, I love him. And I would say, hang in there. You're going to go through some really ugly times, but you're going to come out so far ahead and spinning around like Wonder Woman in your mom's living room, having pride that Wonder Woman is Mexican, and finding out that Marilyn Monroe was half Mexican, that there's going to come the day when you're going to be able to wear a pride shirt during Pride Month, speaking with a bunch of amazing authors, and you're going to be valued and loved just for who you are. Hang in there, baby, because you know what? You're in for a ride, but you're going to love yourself one day. And for all the aspiring writers that are here listening, that have a dream of one day writing your own book, whether it's a rom-com, historical fiction, a memoir, a sci-fi book, a horror story, don't give up on your dream. I had over 150 rejection letters. I even had one person tell me that my writing was mediocre at best, and that no one would ever want to publish my story. And what I tell that person is, here it is, not just in one language, but in multiple languages. I'm not broken. We're not broken. I believe in you. And Susan, thank you, and the Jefferson County Public Library for believing in me too, and helping me, allowing me to be here with such amazing people. Thank you. Happy Pride, everybody.
And happy Pride to you, Jesse, and to everybody. I also want to thank our staff, Debbie, Amber, Sarah, Audie, all behind the scenes. You guys are amazing. Make it flow so seamlessly. I appreciate you. Really nice comments from everybody. Susan, thank you to all the authors. It was wonderful to meet you and learn all about your fabulous books. Bravo. Sarah, thank you to all of our fantastic authors. What an amazing night. Angela, incredible panel of authors, inspiring and fun. And I want to thank our adventurers who come out to our virtual and in-person events. You guys are what makes this really special, because these authors' books wouldn't be in your hands if it wasn't for you. And we do appreciate you so much and your support, and thanks for your purchase of their books. And I want to leave our final closing thoughts to Marcy at the Jefferson County Public Library and thank them for hosting tonight's event. Marcy, come on back and close out our event, please.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you to all of the authors. This was so great. I have so many new books to read, and I'm so glad that this was recorded, because I have friends that I want to watch it, and I want my son to watch it. That statistic that Jeffrey shared about the suicide rate, you know, that like really hit home for me, because when my son was in high school and he came out, a lot of his friends weren't accepted. Some of them ended up without homes. So I had a lot of kids living in my house. And And it was amazing. And they've all grown into these amazing adults. They're 24 now. And to see that change and the resilience. And so thank you. Thank you for being here. I had a great time and I hope you guys did too. Have a good night.
Thank you, Marcy, and thanks on behalf of all the gay young people out there who, for people like you who took them in and under their wing and supported them through really difficult times. So thank you again, everybody. It was fun. You will be notified by tomorrow morning if you are a bingo winner, and we will send your mailing address to the Jefferson County Public Library, who will mail out the book prizes. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
Happy Pride.
Yeah.